11:45 for those of you that are needing any type of PDH credit. So we will have that. I will drop that there so you guys can kind of let me know if you have any questions about that, but I'll make sure I link it several times so you will have the opportunity to just cut and paste it in your browser and to complete that. I will try to have those to you guys no later than Monday or Tuesday of next week at the latest. So I will definitely get those to you. And so we have some very good information that Lauren is going to share with us this morning. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Lauren. And Lauren, I forgot to get the proper enunciation of your word. Of your name, Kolodich.
Kolodi. That's okay. It's a tough one for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Lauren.
Right.
So Lauren is the Deputy Director of North Carolina Coastal Federation. She leads the organization's clean water quality goal collaboration with North Carolina state and local government agencies, businesses, universities, and nonprofits and other sectors to advance nature-based stormwater strategies and low-impact development policy and practices. Working with the Executive Director, one of her primary responsibilities is ensuring implementation of the Federation's annual goals and objectives. She has worked for the Federation since 1992. She received a BS Environmental Conservation from NC State University. Lauren, thank you so much for taking time out to join us today and for your presentation. And I will go ahead and unmute my mic and you have the floor.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm thrilled to be talking with you today. And I hope at least at the end, we can all kind of join in a little bit of collaborative conversation as well. And thank you, Michelle, for the introduction. Today, I'm going to be talking about an action plan for nature-based stormwater strategies, which is a statewide plan. It was just adopted this spring. Let's see, let me through here. This is all about hydrology, really. The plan's all about hydrology, and we all know that urban land uses like paving and rural land uses like ditching alter natural hydrology and really result in both flooding and water quality issues throughout our state. And it really, these techniques limit the land's capacity to take on and absorb rain when we alter that hydrology. And then though we're talking about today is really nature-based stormwater strategies, which are an approach that mimic natural hydrology. And I'm sure many, if not all of you, are aware of these strategies as well. But this is really what the plan is all focused on. Really sustainable design, planning, and engineering practices that mimic the natural hydrology and allow the land to either keep its capacity to infiltrate and store or to replicate and come back in and retrofit the land's ability. And doing that kind of, collectively and comprehensively throughout the landscape or throughout a watershed that we're finding really can be a water quality and water quantity approach so that you're actually reducing flood risks at the same time as you're improving water quality and protecting coastal property. And this all very much ties in to resiliency, as you'll see with the next slide. All very familiar with this, that Governor signed Executive Order 80 that really laid out kind of a series of climate goals, including the development of a resiliency plan for the state. And part of that, one of the findings was that the time to implement nature-based strategies is now. So it really kind of outlined a sense of urgency. So the Pew Charitable Trust and the North Carolina Coastal Federation kind of began some conversations while the climate risk assessment and resilience plan was being finalized, and we recognized the need, thought anyway, for a statewide plan to try to really focus on nature-based strategies and how to advance those and address them. So the action plan that I'm going to talk about today is really meant to complement the risk assessment and resiliency plan, and so not to take the place of it or anything like that. So to develop this action plan that I'm going to get into a little bit later, just wanted to tell you about the process first of all. So I mentioned first of all here that the Pew Charitable Trust and Coastal Federation partnered. We established work groups, and we decided to tackle this plan kind of with looking at 4 different land uses and kind of keeping them in their own boxes. So we looked at new development and kind of that as a topic. Stormwater retrofits or retrofits for existing land uses, roadways as its own. So looking at that linear transportation system, and then working lands. Because remember, I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation that all land uses, any kind of land use alteration, whether it's urban or rural, is changing the hydrology. I'm going to talk about the work groups a little bit later, but basically when we got the groups together, of course, we planned this and then the pandemic hit. So I will say this is something I've never done before, but all of this work between 60 people happened all virtually without me knowing how to do Zoom either. Being an old girl, but it was amazing. There was still a lot of good collaboration that took place. Groups first identified barriers, to nature-based strategies or impact development, and then, really brainstormed about different solutions and opportunities and came up with a set of recommendations. And the ones that I'll go through today are specific to each work group. Again, remember, new development, retrofit, roadway, lands. So we've got recommendations for each of those work groups. Then there's also a set of kind of cross, cutting, overarching recommendations, just a few of those, but that we identified that, hey, these two groups feel that this is a need. So those kind of became kind of the bigger overarching recommendations. Plan was really written kind of in about this time last year, into the winter, and then was finalized. We actually did a peer review. So we had Larry Kaufman, who is kind of like godfather, I guess, of low impact development, who's in Prince George's County, Maryland. And then also Bill Ross, former secretary, and Bill's so involved with land use and hydrology issues, and how to manage coastal and environmental resources in our state. So they were both peer reviewers, and we really got great recommendations. So I'm going to go back just a little bit to this work group topic, because to me, that was, I've done a lot of facilitation and work with stakeholder groups, but I think this was one of the largest and most engaged. And again, it all happened during the pandemic. So this is the new development work group. I'm not going to go through each of these members, but I just wanted to show you kind of how it represented different interests. So here you had, representatives from different divisions within the department, like your own division of water resources, and then we had city engineering, so city local governments. We had engineering firms. Again, different folks within the divisions of Bimler and Division of Water Resources. Annette was part of this team, which I know she's left now, but also APNEP was part of it. And then we had academia, of course, with Bill Hunt. So these were folks that were just on the new development work group. Or the retrofit work group. So again, this was the group that really just focused on existing lands. We had a couple of designers, and we had the Land and Water Fund, and we had NCORE and Triangle J Council of Governments, again, the divisions, and private industry here, private engineers. I did see that Matthew Jones with Hazen and Sawyer is on the webinar today. So Matt, be sure to speak up and add anything that you'd like here, but he was one of our work group members. And then we had like attorneys with Ward and Smith. They do a lot of work representing people who are permitted and people who are trying to, developers who are trying to get permits, but then homeowners associations who are having issues with permits. So again, the academic here was Sarah at NC State. For the roadways work group, it was very DOT heavy. And I did see today that Andy is on the webinar today. So Andy, again, I hope you'll chime in, but Andy did a lot of work with this group, really leading it. And we had, Sea Grant, Barbara Dahl, some of her wonderful research, some again, local governments, City of Jacksonville, and then City of Greensboro, and all the folks that are working on roadways, again, divisions here, state agencies, in addition to DOT. Stephen Morgan, heading up the hydraulics unit with DOT, was an absolute key partner in this roadway working group. And then we had some private engineering firms here, like with HDR and McAdams, that are contracted with or work with DOT on linear projects. So wanted to bring them on board as well. And then finally, For the working lands work group, we had, again, state agencies, divisions, we had restoration companies, attorneys, environmental groups, Farm Bureau, Cooperative Extension, Civil Division of Soil and Water Conservation Services. So lots of different folks. And so the groups that I just showed you, each met initially individually. So we would have different Zooms. And then we came together in the end, I think it was last fall, and kind of put collectively all of the work that we had done together into this one document, which is the action plan for nature-based stormwater strategies. And the plan itself is meant to provide recommendations that are like critical first steps for local governments, for communities, for businesses, and nonprofits to take to help make North Carolina more resilient and improve, again, water quality and the flooding aspect collectively. And then each plan, like I said before, includes the recommendations from each of those work groups. So what do we mean like for new development? You all are probably familiar with this, but this is River Bluffs, which is in New Hanover County. It's in Castle Haynes, so it's on the Paper River. And so just to give you an example, if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about with nature-based stormwater strategies for new development, River Bluffs, I mean, they actually saved over $2 million by not putting in curbing and guttering and installing, stormwater ponds. And they really had to fight regulations both at the local and state level to make that happen. I mean, the typical thing to do is go in and put in a stormwater pond, but this is like on a bluff. It's like sugar sand, and the developer actually saved a lot of money doing it, but had a really hard time getting to that place. But now, of course, he's gotten awards. Burroughs Smith, the developer, the River Bluffs is showcased as one of our key examples for new development with nature-based stormwater strategies. So we've kind of come a long way, and now he's kind of a voice for change. So that's an example of nature-based for new development. So now I want to talk about kind of what the recommendations were in the plan to advance nature-based strategies for new development. And one of them really was to use some of the existing tools that we have in place. The state stormwater manual went through overhaul a couple years ago, and it really calls for and gives credit for use for nature-based strategies like permeable pavement and even rainwater harvesting. And there's also a tool called Storm EZ, which helps developers calculate, using nature-based strategies are all about kind of doing the management approach throughout the site and not just a collection and conveyance. So they needed a tool to easily kind of calculate the storage or the volume reduction that you would do. So there are tools really already out there. And then, one key recommendation is just we just all need to go out there and really start using them. We need, an agent of change. And so it's probably going to require continued conversations and promotion, and hopefully more events like the one Michelle's put on where we're all talking together. The other key recommendation, which also became kind of a cross-cutting recommendation, is actually, it was a pretty bold statement that state-funded construction projects actually should use nature-based stormwater strategies when technically and economically feasible. And, this is really nothing new. I think California does this as well, and there are a couple of other states, but this idea really stemmed from the Bush administration back in 2007, put forth the Energy Independence and Security Act. And that act, federal law, actually calls for federal developments that exceed 5,000 square feet to maintain or restore pre-development hydrology. And again, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about hydrology and using those nature-based strategies to get there. And so, again, that's one of the key recommendations for this work group, was that state-funded construction projects should use nature-based strategies. And then they also took it further and said that local government should actually encourage this as well. And I encourage you all to maybe one time, if you haven't already, have a presentation from Kevin Boyer with the city of Raleigh. Because I don't know if Kevin's on here today, but they're doing amazing things, and they really are actually promoting nature-based strategies on local government construction projects. Then of course, maybe to get this way, maybe we need to increase training and conversation. I think it's all about keeping this issue at the front of everyone's mind. For retrofits, I wanted to show you an example of what we mean by retrofit. So you all may have seen this or been there, but this is the market at Colonnade in Raleigh. And this redevelopment site actually includes parking lot bioretention, you see here, so the water flows in. There's underground detention, and they use bioswales, and then this cistern, which is actually something that they promote and kind of publicize. All the surface runoff from the site in excess of 1 inch. The 1 inch storm is captured, pre-treated, and stored. And actually, from their notes, that the peak discharges from the 2-year and 10-year rainfall events were reduced substantially with the techniques that they put in here. So it's a real case study for what you can do to retrofit existing land uses. And again, that was one of our work groups. So the retrofit recommendations for the nature-based stormwater plan were, looking at what you can do, like market at Colonnade on that level, but even on a site scale where, you have a house that's collecting and conveying stormwater, and how we can promote, simple techniques and strategies, just even on a lot level up to a watershed scale level. So one of their recommendations was that we need to promote, nature-based strategies as a cost-effective, also the preferred way to retrofit. So how that might come into play is if the local government or an entity applying for funds to do some sort of retrofit project, that the nature-based strategy might score higher, or would score higher, for that type of funding. And then also, going back to local governments and state agencies, another recommendation from the retrofit group was to expand the use of these strategies, for retrofits on state property. I'll give you some examples that we've done here at the coast. We've worked with the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission to actually retrofit some of their boating access areas, where we've gone in and helped provide some additional funding, working with the local community. You think about a boating access area or a boat ramp, in a parking lot, it's usually a lot of concrete. And if you can go in either and head that off for new development as a state construction project, or retrofit, like the plan to retrofit originally was to go in and pave it. But then we all collaborated and worked together and found a way to come in and actually put in permeable paving grids. And now we're promoting that, and people are learning from it. It's a case study, and it's helping facilitate some behavioral change within the agency and with us and with the local government. So it's just an all around good thing. But that's what I'm talking about there, is really seizing on the opportunity when you have capital improvement projects that are already going to be undertaken, or when you're retrofitting like a government-owned facility, like a parking lot or what have you, that that nature-based stormwater strategies, be considered by the state and local governments as the first choice. Again, that can be put in local policy or state policy. So another recommendation for the retrofit was to really allocate state resources and significant financial resources for retrofits. And I think we've all seen with the budget that came out that I think we're headed in that direction, which is really great. All right, let me go back. So the next work group is roadways, and the nature-based stormwater strategy plan work group that worked on roadways is really focusing on the different techniques. But what we mean by that is like using the right-of-ways and medians, and using different techniques, different products, different approaches, different planning approaches for the roadway, so that you are actually capturing instead of collecting and discharging this runoff that's generated from this impervious surface, you're actually collecting it and infiltrating it when you can. So as far as the roadway recommendations, one of them was to, that came from that group, was to develop educational and technical resources to improve the understanding of transportation planners, designers, roadside operations managers, and executive decision makers on the value of nature-based stormwater solutions tailored to the linear environment, the transportation infrastructure. So this came from Andy McDaniel, who's with us today. And what this shows, it's an illustration showing how you actually can maximize the shoulder section of roadways to provide numerous benefits, such as reducing the volume of runoff. I can't speak highly enough about Andy and Stephen and other folks at DOT. I mean, they have just really done an amazing job and have so much going on right now. I hope that maybe Andy can share a few words when we get to the end here, but what they're doing right now is amazing. They're doing a total expansion of their BMP toolbox to include nature-based stormwater strategies. So they really, as an agency, have recognized the value of these techniques and the co-benefits of them. And the other thing that DOT is doing right now is they're like incorporating nature-based stormwater strategies into their planning and kind of considering it a whole program level, where they're considering nature-based strategies not just as the stormwater management at the end, but it's part of the planning, the design, the avoidance and minimization phases, and also the maintenance and the construction phases. So they're looking now at these nature-based strategies, all those different levels of the decision making, planning, permitting, construction, and then maintenance. And you'll be hearing, I think, a lot from them in the future. I know they plan to do, and one of the recommendations was for there to be advanced training and tools to make sure that not only with DOT, but that the engineering firms that work with DOT, that they're all kind of coming from the same playbook and understand those values of how to maximize the values that come when maximizing nature-based strategies when feasible. Let's see. So with working lands, that work group really focused on how to replicate hydrology on like farm and forested lands. I think the example that's closest to me is here in Carteret County, North River Farms. It's a 6,000 acre farm that the Coastal Federation actually purchased. But it, stitched and drained, and we have gotten numerous grants to go back in and restore the hydrology. So we've changed ditches into kind of meandering streams and wetlands to hold back the water, and it's now filtering and absorbing millions and millions of gallons of runoff per year and actually shellfish waters in certain areas adjacent to the restoration have opened back up for harvest. Excuse me. So that's one of the great case studies, and of course you all are familiar with the work that Barbara Dahl, I would think, has been doing, and maybe she's already presented, but if not, I think she'd be another wonderful presenter. But Barbara and her team really have seen the value of replicating hydrology, and they've been able to see actually specific results from that modeling to show that if certain fields and wetlands and areas are restored and acquired or restored, that they're going to have a certain value, and she can actually calculate the value and the areas that would be prevented from being flooded. So it's amazing research that she's done. She was actually on that work group as well. So with the work group recommendations, basically, considering that, working lands are kind of the primary land use in North Carolina still, and they already have amazing functions to hold back and treat water, that we should use additional or seek additional funding to secure and to provide financial support and incentives to owners of working lands, help some incentive for actually maintaining the working landscape of North Carolina. And that we also should pursue strategic partnerships and regional planning to protect, restore, or replicate the natural hydrology on working lands. There's a lot of funding coming down from the federal and state governments that probably can go toward a lot of this, and it's considered, and it is considered resiliency. So that's something I know that work group probably reconvene and talk about what to do with some of this funding that's come down. So now I showed you just generally some of the recommendations from the new development, the retrofit, the roadways and the working lands. And then now really finally, I'm almost done here with the presentation part, but these are some of the cross-cutting recommendations that kind of all the groups collectively thought were important. And one was really looking at a statewide kind of volume-based watershed management framework that focuses on protecting and restoring and mimicking the natural hydrology. So we've done a lot of watershed restoration plans at the coast, and I know they're being done in other areas of the state. But what we've really focused on at the Coastal Federation is this volume reduction approach, which again is about hydrology, mimic the natural hydrology. You can actually calculate the volume. You have a volume reduction goal, and you calculate how you're doing your progress in getting there with each implementation project. And we've seen some wonderful, amazing results. And so one of the recommendations was to focus this nature-based effort in a watershed management framework. Another cross-cutting recommendation was having the state lead by example. So that kind of goes back to that new development recommendation that said that state construction, new state construction should use nature-based strategies. And then remember I said that for the retrofit group, they said that retrofits on state and local government properties should use nature-based. It's just this, overarching kind of recommendation that the state really needs to help be the agent of change here. And doing so by making sure that these projects and these types of projects are on state and local properties. This is at UNC Wilmington, actually, and this is a retrofit that we did in the Bradley Hewlett's Creek, because we have a watershed restoration plan there. So the idea would be when you go in and you retrofit, you have to pull up some pavement. You would go back in and do whatever technique. It doesn't have to be this one necessarily, but you go back in and retrofit in a way that's going to get more back toward the natural hydrology more so. But doing this for retrofit, in addition, when you have new construction projects at state facilities. So this is one example where actually there was some change that happened because the university, after we did this project, was going in and already had plans to resurface the parking lot. And we didn't have any funding to help with that particular parking lot, but because they learned the techniques here, which basically what we did is went in and saw cut around the storm drain and put permeable pavement so that when it rains, not huge storm, but when it rains, it soaks in before it gets to the storm drain. So they went in and actually did that themselves on a parking lot at the university. And that's the kind of thing that we're talking about, facilitating that type of behavior change where how to get this nature-based strategies or LID at the forefront, at the front of our minds and change make this our business as usual approach. So anyway, sorry, I kind of got off on that one, but that's having the state lead by example was another key cross-cutting recommendation. Increasing knowledge, that's always good, right? We're not going to learn, and we're not going to learn from each other if we don't keep talking, both in very specific technical trainings like that are offered from NC State and others, but then also just dialogues between different levels of decision makers. I have been promoting low impact development and nature-based strategies for a very long time, and I do get very discouraged when, driving to work this morning, I see another conventional curb and gutter parking lot going in on my way to work. And so, if we could just, all get on the kind of same page with understanding the economic and the environmental values of nature-based stormwater strategies and the resiliency function that they provide, be better shape. Another cross-cutting recommendation, this is the final one, that we really need dedicated leadership to ensure success. So kind of like any other plan, if you develop the plan and then you don't have somebody really moving behind it, then it's not going to go very far. So one of the cross-cutting recommendations is to have dedicated leadership to ensure the success. So we're talking about here, really, Larry Kaufman in Maryland, he said, Lauren, this is a really great plan. What you really need is an agent of change. And so that would be the idea, with this dedicated leadership and with continuation of the work group committees and other conversations and dialogues like the one we're having here. But I think we all need to be a part of being this agent of change. We all collectively need to do it. But hopefully this dedicated leadership will keep this conversation up at the state level where it needs to be and where change can actually take place at the state level. I know it's a little bit early, but I think that is really kind of the overarching review of the plan. And I actually was hoping that we could have a little time to talk, especially I know that there are at least 2 other work group members on the webinar today. And Michelle, I'm not sure if they have the ability.
Yeah, they can, if you want to pull them in, they can just simply unmute themselves.
Okay,
So if you guys kind of want to have that discussion, that's not a problem at all.
Michelle, do I need to go ahead and make you presenter again?
Are you finished with your presentation?
Well, I am finished with the presentation. Now, I did have a scan code on there. Maybe I took that off too soon. I don't know, but if people need that back on or not.
Well, yeah, you can share your screen again and just pop that back on there when you finish or after you guys have your, group discussion, and then you can just swap it back if you want.
Okay.
But I think you do have a couple of questions. So do you want to wait and do your questions at the end, or you want to go ahead on and answer? I see 1 or 2 questions here.
I mean, we could go ahead and do that, and then I guess the thing is, I'm not sure that I can see the folks when I've got this when I'm sharing the presentation. I don't think I can see people. So you might need to let them in if there are people that were either on the work groups themselves or the questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they can just simply turn on their video and yeah. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead on and answer. I think this is just one question. I think Elizabeth said, this is great to see retrofits. How is this impacting current multi-unit residential development, which still seems to be nearly 100% regrading forest removal and storm management ponds?
For the retrofits or the new development?
She just said how's it impacting current multi-unit residential developments, which seems to be nearly 100% regrading, forest removal, and storm management. So yeah.
I mean, Burroughs was kind of a trailblazer there doing it that way. I mean, we've had other successes like working. There are lots of examples, good case studies, but is it being done, mainstream? No, not at all. And, that's where I think when I mentioned like the conversations that have to take place, I don't know if it needs to be permitting staff that, when a developer first comes in, I mean, part of the conversation is that, have you considered this? I don't know if it can be that simple. I don't think so. No, it's not being done mainstream. And so either what we have found is that when we have good examples and we promote those and we have a better chance of replicating them when we can make the economic and the environmental and the resiliency case about them, which financially we've been able to do, and then with the environment as well. It's just gonna, I think, take, continued conversation. I know we talk with the engineering community, and they say that a lot of times by the time something comes to them, that funding has already been spent, and but I think that the engineers can play a key role in helping with the conversation. And then hopefully, again, when more and more people see this approach, and that it's that it works, that can be applied. We've had conversations, with developers and here along the coast, and well, sorry, I'm kind of repeating myself, but I just think that's where we've got to kind of all be having this at the front of our minds, and we see this as the next generation of stormwater management, and really push it.
Okay, well, it looks here, I'm going to read this. Erica basically stated that she lives in a neighborhood with the HOA, and she could share information with others in the neighborhood about how individual homeowners can improve stormwater management on their individual properties and for the neighborhood and downstream areas. Where can she find individual homeowner materials?
Yes, okay, so we have this booklet called Smart Yards, which if you go to the Coastal Federation's webpage, or later I could see if I can put it in the chat link when I take the presentation off. But it's great. I mean, it's a very simple guide, and it talks about stormwater, and it talks about what you can do on your lot level, and it has rain garden, and it gives different resources, like whether it's a Sea Grant, the NC State, but it goes through even disconnecting your downspout and the impact that has, and rain barrels and rain gardens and living shorelines if you live at the coast, and using native plants. So we've definitely got the guide for you, and you can share it either electronically, or we have some copies here that I'd be happy to send as well. And you can email me directly at laurenk@nccoast.org. If you wanted to send it to you directly, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, so we have another question. It says, can you provide a contact person at Barrow Smith? A similar project could benefit from talking with someone there who is familiar with how they came to accept NVSS.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, maybe I should have put my email on here, but if you want to email me, then I can email you Barrow's contact information and kind of a fact sheet about his project. But my email is, I don't know if I have it on here. Nope, I don't. Email is Lauren K at, so it's LAURENK at nccoast.org.
Okay. Shannon wants to know, are there plans for further promoting the plan, and are there measurable outcomes from the plan yet?
Yes. So all of the things that I mentioned with DOT, and I'm hoping maybe Andy will chime in if he's still here. And I think he is. But again, they're totally revamping their toolbox for DOT. They are considering their planning. They're looking at NVSS before, at the beginning, not kind of at the stormwater phase of the project. City of Raleigh has done wonderful things. If you go on their website, or I can send that link as well. But the City of Raleigh is actually promoting nature-based strategies for new development. We were part of it. We were waiting. We actually have been having conversations about a potential maybe executive order or some sort of route for this nature-based strategies for state construction. So there have been a couple of conversations around that. We were waiting to see what happened with the budget. And so the budget, that just came out does have funding in there for a framework. And so that's something that we've had lots of conversations with different entities and the environmental community as far as what that watershed framework should look like. And And then also we've been working with the Division of Coastal Management on their Resilient Coastal Communities program. And that has a lot of requirement and emphasis on nature-based stormwater strategies. So we've been partnering with them most recently and are looking at some things. But no, I mean, this will continue to ramp up. Had actually, I'm sorry, like a press conference on this back in August. You know, again, with the emphasis on resiliency and you know, stormwater and flooding. You know, definitely the conversations will continue, and the motivation and the push to implement the plan will continue, for certain.
Okay.
Lauren, this is Andy McDaniel.
Oh, great. Hi, Andy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm happy to give you a real brief overview of what we've been doing if you want.
I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
So Andy's with the hydraulics unit at DOT.
Yeah, thanks. Again, my name is Andy McDaniel. I'm with the DOT's hydraulics unit, Highway Stormwater Program. And also on the line today is Brian Lipscomb with the Highway Stormwater Program as well. He leads up our BMP Toolbox and Post-Construction Stormwater Program initiatives. There's kind of four main areas that the DOT's been working on now with nature-based solution. One is research. This is an area we've actually been delving into for a number of years with our partners at NC State University, University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and the University of Delaware. So we've been doing a lot of work in trying to better understand how to improve soil, to promote infiltration, as well as increase pollinator habitat. So as you saw that diagram, that's, you know, the roadway tends to be compacted on purpose, you know, to support the transportation facility itself, but not all of that needs to be compacted. So we're doing a lot of work to see how we can change that in a sustainable way, in a long-term way, to improve the infiltration capacity of the right-of-way. The other area is field trials. So we've got our partners, industry partners at McAdams, preparing a nature-based solution action plan for the DOT in the Falls Lake watershed, where we're going out, and this is mostly a retrofit situation, but the techniques would apply for new development as well. So we've developed you know, a couple of dozen or more really opportunities have been identified to implement nature-based solutions in the Falls Lake watershed. And then we'll program those for implementation to get a real world feel for some of these new techniques that we're developing. And we'll be able to share those experiences with everybody. The other area is policy and design. That's kind of where Brian is leading the charge here with looking at some of our policy, and as Lauren mentioned, bringing stormwater planning into the process at a much earlier stage in the project development than we ever have before. And we've implemented some of those policy changes already. You know, looking at our typical sections for roadways and creating design engineer drawings to illustrate to the engineers how a typical section could be altered to include nature-based solutions. And of course, as you mentioned, Lauren, Brian is implementing a significant expansion of our BMP toolbox, which has started off with a nationwide search of what other peer states are doing and what other tools and techniques that has been successful in those states, but we don't yet have in North Carolina DOT's toolbox. So we've completed that work, and now Brian is leading the effort to prepare those design specifications for these new tools. And then finally, our area of focus is on education and outreach. So we plan to have some video-based training for our consultants on these new techniques. But also, we're working at the national level to leverage resources there. There's a lot of interest at the national level on how to better use the right of way for water management. And we're interested in partnering to create an information portal that will be available to everyone. It'll be focused on state DOTs nationally, but everyone will have access to it. And it'll include all sorts of topics related to the use of the right of way for a wide variety of things. But one of the focus of our work is on water management. So those are the kind of the 4 areas right now NCDOT has been focused on: research, field trials, policy and design, and then education and outreach. Thank you, Lauren, for your work here and leadership. We appreciate it.
Well, I apologize, Brian. I didn't know you were doing so much. Golly. I'm sorry. You guys have so many folks at DOT, and I apologize. That's, yeah, and I shortchanged you on the presentation, so I'm so glad you were here, both of you, for sure. I mean, it is, I've never seen an agency move so fast on just kind of really embracing these techniques and making them happen. I mean, it's I wish we could do that in other areas of our work on this. It would be great.
So Lauren, do you want to answer a couple more questions? And what I'll do for the questions that I'm not able to get to, Lauren, would you mind answering those individually? And then I can email those to the people that actually asked the question, maybe after the webinar or within.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, because we have quite a few, and I just know we may not be able to get to all of them. So at your convenience, whenever you have the opportunity to respond, then yeah, we'll get all that squared away. But I will go back up here and let's see here. I'm so sorry. I had them here. Okay, so basically, Josh was asking, is this something you present to individual city governments that can provide tax incentives related to property owners' stormwater fees?
I mean, we would be happy to present to local governments, whether virtually or in person. I mean, if you're talking about getting an overview of the plan. Also, I mean, a lot of, I don't know if the community you're talking about is at the coast or, you know, in the Piedmont or mountains, but we have folks that were on the work group that probably someone from your area that would be happy to present. For example, Kevin Boyer, if you're talking about somewhere near Raleigh, he might be willing to talk and share some of those actual local government perspectives as well. If you guys could put in there kind of, there's a specific local government you're talking about, but yes, we definitely would be willing and able to do that.
Okay, and I'll drop Lauren's email in the chat as well, and I'll also put the link for the PDH credit in the link in the chat as well. So we have another question for you, Lauren, from Larry. He wants to know, what are the major the pre versus the post construction site parameters one should be aware of before considering a nature-based approach for a project to be successful?
So say that again, the pre.
Yeah, like the pre-construction versus post-construction site parameters one should be aware of before considering a nature-based approach for a project.
Well, I mean, okay. So I mean, I guess, you know, there is value in just the actual disconnection of impervious surfaces or not connecting them in the first place. So I was going to say soils, and that is very important, and slope. I mean, all of those things, you know, make it easier or more difficult. But one of the keys is the disconnection. And there was research done by NC State that even showed, you know, on clay soils, this connection of downspouts and the infiltration capacity and the ability to reduce volume of runoff, even in those clay soils. And the whole, again, premise was not collecting and conveying and discharging, but throughout the site, you know, capturing rain where it falls is really the end goal with the hydrology. So I mean, I could say, you know, it doesn't have to be a certain size. It could be a retrofit or, you know, anything, if you take a downspout that's currently going to a sidewalk and you put it into your yard, you're doing more of that technique, and that's a very small area. So there's really no, what I'm trying to say is there's really no site parameter, if I'm understanding the question correctly. It can be done almost anywhere. It can be done at a lot level up into, we worked with Walmart in New Hanover County. They were way far down the line. We sat down with them and they were willing to go back in and change their landscape islands. Instead of them, being convex, they made them concave, and they put curb cuts in, and they still have their, their overflow drains, so that if a big storm, then they still have that infrastructure. Just on the average rain, the rain is going into the landscaping to water it instead of, flowing into a big stormwater pond, 100% of the time. So it can be done on any scale. Think about that market at Colonnade. We used several different techniques and had a great return.
Okay, I think we had time for one more, and this is from Rob. Rob wants to know, well, basically he stated local municipalities require easements for every device included in the stormwater plan. My custom builder clients can't guarantee locations of devices since they don't even know where the nature-based areas will be located. Therefore, the developer cannot assure that the disconnected storm systems will meet all municipality requirements, and they aren't able to even try these kinds of alternatives. Any way around this?
It'd be nice if this person could email me the location, or either speak up and talk about the location that they're at. And I mean, each local government has different stormwater regulations, the drainage regulations, setbacks, and so forth. So that's pretty site-specific question to answer without looking at more of the details and getting some help on that. There is a list of potential ordinance opportunities and incentives, but both incentive-based and policy-based, that was put out by EPA. It's about a 4-page document, and people have been incorporating, this at the local level, through local governments, through various approaches, either with, again, incentives and, stormwater fees or density credits and so forth. So it's a very site-specific question, but I can easily provide just this general list of ordinance options, or we can, if you want to get in touch with me, then we can dig deeper into your specific location. I'd be happy to do it.
All right, well, sounds great. So what we're going to do is just going to go ahead on and cut the questions off for now. And what I'll do is email Lauren the rest of the questions that she was not able to get to. And then I will email the individual that asked the question individually, so they will get get that response. So I'll do that as soon as we end the webinar. And I just kind of want to thank you so much, Lauren, for that wonderful presentation. We really thank you for taking the time out to share with us today. And I think everybody has the link for the PDH credit. One thing that I do want to make sure that I let everybody know, because sometimes I still get this, is to please put your first and last name on it, because it's so hard sometimes if you're new to the webinar and I may not have your email already saved in my Outlook. So just definitely need your first and last name in order to give you credit for that. And I also want to make sure that you guys tune in to our December the 15th webinar. Mark Hostman is going to be talking about the Cresswell Beach Dune infiltration system. So that's on December the 15th. And starting next week, I'll go ahead on and send everybody the regular marketing material, so you can kind of sign up for that. And yeah, and just put it on your calendars. That way you don't miss it. And I think that's pretty much it that we have for you guys today. And again, I hope everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. And I hope everyone have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. And we are looking forward to seeing you guys next month.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Everyone have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Lauren, if you don't mind, I know we talked about this, about sharing your presentation, so I can put that on the website as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so
I'll,
we'll,
as soon as I get off, I'll go, now, I don't think it's too big to email to you. I guess I should save it as a PDF, huh?
yeah, so it can't be altered. Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Wow, how many people do you think are on? This is so exciting.
It
Oh,
was
Kevin was on.
206 people actually tuned into this morning.
Wow, that's great. I didn't real. I wish I'd known Kevin Boyer was on. Um, yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
Thank you. And how do I get on your list, Michelle? I'd like to, if it's okay for nonprofits to attend as well, I'd like to attend your
Yeah,
casual,
yeah.
your
I'll definitely, I'll
casual
put you,
weeks.
yeah, I'll put you, I have a list that have different organizations and municipalities and things of that nature. So I add you to that list.
Okay, that's
That,
great.
yeah, and I'll send it out. I send it out usually. I know people probably get tired, but I send it out at least once a week to kind of keep it in front of people so they don't forget about it, you know?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
You're doing a great job. I'm impressed.
Well, thank you so very much. And yep, so I'll get that sent out to you probably next Monday or Tuesday. And you can just add it to your calendar, and it's every third Wednesday of the month.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
All righty then. And did you already make me the presenter again? I just want to make sure something.
I did. I
Okay.
did. Can you, I mean, I hope I did it right.
Yep, I'm good.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and you have a wonderful rest of the day. Again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.